Yo, what's going on? It's your boy, Corey, man. We're back in here. We're gonna do 4 video uploads today. Yeah, I'm ready to get right into it. Here we go. We got this video right here. This is Avengers Endgame lied to us. Oh, Steve Rogers was never Steve. I saw in the thumbnail they say it was his son. I don't know. Let's get into it.
What if the old Steve Rogers we saw at the end of Endgame was never Steve Rogers at all? He was Steve and Peggy's son that we saw in Avengers Doomsday first trailer. What if Marvel has been hiding the truth in plain sight since 2019? Welcome back to MovieCast. I'm your host, Liam Harrison, and today we're diving into one of the most shocking Marvel theories yet. A theory that could completely rewrite Avengers Endgame, Avengers Doomsday, and the future of the MCU itself. This isn't just about time travel or the multiverse. This is about legacy, sacrifice, and a secret child who may have been standing right in front of us all along. Everything you think you know about Steve Rogers' ending might be wrong, and once this clicks, there's no unseeing it. So let's slow down, rewind the timeline, and step into the shadows Marvel never explained. When Avengers Endgame ended, we were given what looked like a peaceful conclusion for Steve Rogers. He returned the Infinity Stones, chose a life with Peggy Carter, and decades later appeared as an old man sitting calmly on a bench waiting to pass the shield to Sam Wilson. Fans accepted this as a poetic ending, but something about it never truly added up. Steve Rogers wasn't just any man. He was a super soldier, enhanced by a serum that dramatically slowed aging. We've seen characters like Bucky Barnes barely age across nearly a century. Even Isaiah Bradley, after decades of torture, didn't age like a normal human. So how did Steve Rogers, who lived only around 50 years in the past with Peggy, suddenly appear frail, wrinkled, and visibly aged like a regular 90-year-old man? The math doesn't work. The science doesn't work. And Marvel, a studio obsessed with detail, wouldn't overlook something this big without intention. This is where the theory truly begins to take shape. What if the Steve Rogers who lived with Peggy Carter after returning the stones wasn't the same Steve who sat on that bench? What if the original Steve, the super soldier Steve, lived his life in the shadows while someone else took his place at the end? In the newly released Avengers Doomsday teaser, we see a shocking visual, Peggy Carter holding a baby in her arms with Steve Rogers standing beside her. Marvel didn't show this moment by accident. That child is not just a symbol of a happy ending. That child is the missing puzzle piece. Because if Steve and Peggy truly built a life together, then the most logical outcome isn't just marriage, it's a family. And that child, born without the super soldier serum, would grow up as a normal human being. A human who would age naturally. A human who decades later could look exactly like the old man we saw in Endgame. Now let's take this one step deeper, because the timeline Marvel is showing us in Avengers Doomsday isn't the present MCU timeline at all. The teaser subtly hints that we're watching events from the past, specifically the alternate timeline Steve created when he chose to stay with Peggy. Meanwhile, the present-day MCU is moving forward with entirely different events. The Fantastic Four ship appearing in Thunderbolts isn't random. That scene belongs to the main timeline where multiversal cracks are forming and Doctor Doom is already making moves. The Doomsday teaser, on the other hand, is centered around Steve and Peggy's timeline, the one that was never supposed to be explored until now. Marvel is finally pulling back the curtain on what really happened after Steve stayed behind, and that story is far darker and more important than we ever imagined. Dr. Doom's involvement is the key that locks everything into place. Doom isn't just a villain with advanced technology, he's a master of time, dimensions, and forbidden knowledge. If Doom becomes aware of Steve's altered timeline, then Steve's peaceful life was never truly peaceful. Imagine this. Steve and Peggy raise their child in secrecy, knowing the dangers of the world. Somewhere during this time, Doom enters their lives. not as a conqueror at first, but as an observer. He sees a super soldier who abandoned the sacred flow of time, a man who created a branch reality simply to live a normal life. Doom understands the multiverse better than anyone, and he knows that Steve Rogers is the anchor of this timeline. Remove Steve, and the entire reality collapses. Suddenly, Steve's choice isn't just personal, it's cosmic. This explains why Avengers Doomsday seems so deeply focused on Steve Rogers again. Not the Steve we know from the present, but the Steve who stayed behind. That version of Steve becomes the center point of Doom's plans. Doom doesn't need the Avengers of the main timeline yet, he needs Steve. He needs access to the man who broke time and lived to tell the tale. And when Doom finally strikes, it won't be in the present. It will be in Steve's past timeline, when his child is still young, when Peggy is still alive, and when Steve has everything to lose. This transforms Doomsday from a standard Avengers film into a deeply personal tragedy. Steve isn't fighting to save the universe anymore. He's fighting to protect his family. As the conflict escalates, Steve realizes something devastating. His existence in this timeline is the very reason Doom can manipulate it. The universe is unstable because Steve Rogers was never meant to grow old here. He was supposed to return the stones and disappear. That's when the ultimate sacrifice comes into focus. To stop Doom and prevent a multiversal collapse that leads into secret wars, Steve must erase himself. Not by dying in battle, but by stepping out of time entirely. This is where the original Steve Rogers truly meets his end, not on a battlefield, but as a guardian of reality. He sacrifices his own future so that his child can have one. Doom may be defeated, but at an unimaginable cost. Steve Rogers is gone forever. Years pass. Decades pass. Peggy Carter grows old and tells their son the truth, not as a burden, but as a responsibility. She tells him about Captain America, about sacrifice, about a promise that must be kept. She tells him that one day, at a specific time, on a specific bench, he must be there. Not to change history, but to complete it. This child grows up knowing he isn't Captain America. He doesn't have powers. He doesn't have a serum. But he has something else, Steve Rogers' heart. And when the time comes, he follows the instructions exactly as they were given. He travels to the main timeline, sits on that bench, and waits for Sam Wilson. This is why no one questions where Steve came from. This is why no alarms go off. This is why the moment feels so calm. Because the man on that bench isn't a super soldier disrupting time, he's a normal human fulfilling his father's final mission. When he hands Sam the shield, it isn't just a passing of the mantle. It's the closing of a loop that began the moment Steve chose love over duty. The shield doesn't belong to the strongest Avenger anymore. It belongs to the future. And Steve Rogers' story doesn't end with him growing old, it ends with him creating something greater than himself. When you look back at Endgame now, everything changes. The silence of that scene. The lack of explanation. The absence of Peggy. Marvel wasn't being vague. They were being careful. They knew this story couldn't be told yet. It needed Doomsday. It needed Doom. It needed the multiverse to fracture enough for...
I don't know about all that. I doubt any of that is going to happen. He probably just going to be on Hydra's team, help Doom. Something simple. Anyways, thank y'all for watching. We got 3 more videos we're going to do. Let's get right into it.